presence of grace.
Thank you.
Yes, yes, in more ways
And
than
you know,
one.
I never consider my name when I say grace that this is something special, that I'm holy. I haven't reached that yet. 62 years, I should start working on it.
You're older than 62. Anyway, we won't go any further than that comment. So, Grace, thank you.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you for coming to tell your story.
You're welcome, Peg.
And what's sad about coming to tell your story is we've only got 30 minutes to tell this lifetime of yours, which is filled with many experiences. All right, so as you said, you're a Chicago woman.
South Side.
South Side Chicago. Is there any other side of
No.
Illinois?
Well, other
Right.
people say there are, but you know.
Okay. Tell us a bit about your beginnings, your folks and your dear brothers.
Well, my folks, first of all, my mother was born in Bardstown, Kentucky. My dad was born in a lean-to in, I'm not sure if it was winter. We could never quite get where my father was born in South Dakota.
South Dakota.
Poor, 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 poor. And my father and his clan, which would be his grandparents and aunts and uncles, all seemed to live in this same hut-like. My dad did talk about it a lot, and we knew he didn't want to talk about it, so we didn't press him on that. My mom was born on a plantation. Now, what difference could there be?
Oh my gosh.
A plantation right outside Louisville, Bardstown. Now, my mom tended to call it the plantation. Her brothers and sisters called it the farm. So we don't know for sure where we're from and what we grew up as. But anyway, how did my mom and dad ever get together? Well, they were related or connected to railroad, for one thing. My mom's father worked for the L&N. That's a Southern Railroad. And they wanted to go to Chicago. They had an invitation to come to Chicago that they thought that would be better for them. So they came up to Chicago, South Side, over by Mount Carmel. My dad, his family, his mother, and her sister thought they're not going to live in this out in Dakota. So they decided to go into nursing. And believe it or not, they went to a Mercy nursing school from my connection with Mercy eventually. And so that's how they got to Chicago. And it happens that my mother and my father's families were a half a block when they moved finally into Chicago, a half a block from one another.
Oh my.
So there's no really connection except per chance. My dad ended up going to Mount Carmel. He was not a good student. He had no schooling preparation. He may have been a good student, but we don't know. My mother family, she was right across the street from Aquinas High School. Why would she not go there? She didn't like it. This for one thing, she didn't go there. She went there for 1 year.
You're kidding, really?
And then popped out. So that's how their connection was. Now my mother saw my father around the neighborhood, and she thought, isn't he handsome? And then she found out he went to Carmel. So she thought, I'm not going to Aquinas, it's just across the street. I'm going to go to Loretta, which is just across the street from Mount Carmel.
Smart woman.
She was the go-getter.
So then, when did they get married then?
They got married in 1931.
Okay.
And they finished high school, both did. My dad wanted to go on to school. He got a scholarship to go up to school in Wisconsin somewhere. Not Marquette. Well, it could have been Marquette. But they didn't, and he was a natural athlete. So he could play everything. If you gave him a ball, he knew instinctively what to do with it, which is true in our family, except for one of my brothers. I won't mention Bob, though. So anyway, he became an athlete, but he did go up to Wisconsin, but he dropped out of school because there was no scholarship. He thought there was one. So, and my mom had no intentions of going on to school. She didn't particularly care for school. So she started working. What did she work for? The Illinois Central Railroad.
Oh.
What did my dad work for? The Illinois Central Railroad, because that side of the family were railroad people. So that's really the connection there. They got married very quickly. My father said, I think we ought to elope one weekend to my mother. And my mother said, oh no, I can't do that to my family. So they got married in St. Philip Neri in May of 1931, and they walked from their home to the church because it was right across the street. Now, you just say, well, how did the Adrian Dominicans ever get into your life? Because, because St. Philip Neri was right there. But the St. Philip Neri didn't have a convent. They had 2 apartment buildings. And what was the third house on the street? The Bowlings. That was my family, my mother's family. And she had all her brothers and sisters were there. Where was my dad? Around the corner. So I mean, it was connected. Where did my mom and dad live when they got married? Half a block away from Carmel. But that's where the Adrian Dominicans came in. And my grandfather was conscious of that. Like when my mom and brothers and sisters would have supper, they could not talk because the sisters weren't talking. My mother's first question to me when I entered was, what do you all do? We know you went to eat because our dining room was close to your.
The dining room was close because the houses were so
right close.
They're like this, right?
Right close.
Right.
And so all this.
So the nuns weren't talking. So your mother and dad weren't talking.
No, they weren't, because my dad had my grandfather had 2 sisters that were Loretta's sisters.
Got it.
So shh, the sisters aren't talking. And then my mom said, and then all of a sudden, you all started talking. What is that about? Well, it was probably a recreation day. Oh, well, I wish they would have told my father that, my grandfather that, so that they could talk. So they couldn't go out in the yard and play if the nuns had their, quote, clothes hanging out to dry. I mean, you can't see the sisters' underwear. That would be terrible.
So to get back to your siblings, you said sisters. I didn't know you had a sister.
I don't.
Oh, okay.
My mother and dad had sisters, but I never did. I have
Your
4
siblings,
My siblings, I have 4 brothers.
You're the oldest child.
No, I'm not.
You're not?
Peg. You just thought that. My oldest child, there's 5 of us. 2 of them are gone, my 2 oldest brothers. They're Chicago firemen. They were the oldest, the next is my brother Patrick, and then comes myself, and then comes Bob. I am the only daughter. Did I think that was wonderful? I never thought about it.
Yeah.
Later on, someone in the convent, someone in the crowd said, gee, wasn't it terrible not to have any sisters? And I thought, no. I liked having my brothers.
Yeah.
We were very congenial. We were good together. We also were all athletes, so that was a good thing.
And they were very protective of you.
I don't think so.
No?
No, I don't think so. I think they were pretty normal with me, I don't think either my mother would want me to be protected by my brothers because God knows what that would mean. So anyway, that's how that got to. My mom got to know the Aquinas sisters. She was impressed by them. My grandfather was terribly impressed by them and thought, yes, my mother should be a nun. Furthest thing from my mother's mind was to be a nun. Never thought of it. So as time went on, we moved. My mother and dad got married, then all of us started to come. We moved to St. Felicitas Parish, and that's on the southeast side. The IHM's taught there. Now, I didn't know one order from another order. I don't know if you did that, but we did.
We had so many religious in our family, different. I didn't I?
Oh, so we moved to St. Felicitas Parish, and there was this Monsignor who was the Monsignor there, a very fine priest. He was a very, very fine parish priest, and he was interested in the families and interested in kids. So it was just for my mother, it was a godsend. So if it ever came, and we all lived in apartment buildings. The last apartment we lived in was on the 3rd floor, and no children could be live in the apartment. Well, when my mother said yes and put her thing on the lease, my mom and dad, we already were 4 children. Now, and I never remember my mother saying, shh, 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 the landlord, shh, shh, shh. So there we were on the 3rd floor with 4 children. And so what else happened? there we were on the third floor with 5 children. So we all lived there, and it was fine, no problem. But it was St. Felicitas. Then, and we lived there. It was the 4th move I had in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom never moved out of the parish. And later on in life, I said to her, Mom, why did you never move out of St. Felicitas? It's not the closest to everything you needed. She said, no, but the IHMs taught there. They were good teachers. I could tell they were good teachers. I could tell by my boys. And I was interested in making sure my boys had what they needed. I wasn't worried about you. The boys had what they needed. So every move was, we made a circle around the parish. And finally, when we were, gosh, I was a freshman in high school, we made our last move. We bought a home, which was, oh, this is like we were rich. We bought a home, and where was the home? Riverdale, a suburb. It cost me more to get to school than to pay the tuition in the school.
Oh, my word. Mm-hmm.
And this was my senior year.
Mm-hmm.
Happy with the move? No, but that was... So anyway, that's where we ended up. That's how we moved around and moved around. The boys all went to Mount Carmel. I was going to go to Loretta, and my brother Red came through the kitchen. He's the oldest. An ultimate big brother. Ultimate big. He came through the kitchen. He said, what you two doing out here? Mom and I were at the kitchen filling out forms. He said, what are you doing here? And I said, oh, I'm getting my forms ready for high school. Where are you going? I said, oh, Loretta. You're not going to Loretta. And it was the first time he ever said something to me I couldn't do. And I just looked at him. Well, who are you? Tell me where to go to school. He said, you're going to Aquinas. That's where the nice girls go. Aquinas. Get rid of those papers. So it was Red that really had me ended up at Aquinas. Mm-hmm. I never would have known it.
So you and how many others entered in 1956?
Of us from Aquinas, 12.
12, yeah.
It was a big crowd.
Mm-hmm.
And the interesting thing about it is I don't ever remember talking to one another about entering.
Oh, you're kidding. How many were in the graduating class?
Oh, probably 210.
Oh. Yeah.
But I mean, Annie Guinan, Pat Hughes, Virginia Moore. Virginia didn't enter. Matt Corley. We were all kids that went together. We just didn't talk about entering the convent. It wasn't the most interesting thing to talk about. So that was strange. And we had some kind of an occasion where all the whole high school got together, and people were talking about where they were going what were they going to do with their life, and people were getting up talking, and every now and then one that entered would get up and say, well, I'm going to the Adrian congregation, which surprised us. I mean, it surprised me, and I mean, these were friends that I had in high school. Gene Hughes and I never talked about going to the convent. So it wasn't the topic of conversation.
So when you all got to Adrian, you said, oh, here.
No, we found out before we got there that we
I'm
were
sure
all
you
going.
Did, yeah.
But like it wasn't when all of a sudden you were talking about, if I remember when you had to sign a paper and send it in to Mother Gerald or send it in to somebody, and I had to mail it, so I was dickering back and forth, should I not, should I not? And so finally I said, do it. So I filled it all out, walked out of the school, Aquinas, walked across the street, and I said, now, if I put this in the mailbox and it goes in, that means I should enter.
Of course.
If I put it in the mailbox and it doesn't, I shouldn't enter.
Oh, God, that was very
philosophical. Deep.
Yeah. Oh, God.
It went in. So I entered.
How strange. Now, and you entered in 56, and you've been involved in various ministries.
Yes.
In these last, is it 62 years?
62, Peg.
62, yeah. Of those 62 years, what ministry, you might be a couple, that were just very significant. What were those ministries and why were they?
Well, we had a mission in Montgomery, Alabama, St. Bede.
Oh, you were there with Catherine.
Catherine McKillop.
Right.
I was there with June Rassico. I was there 1 year with Catherine McKillop. And then I was there for 7 years. The next year, I was there with June Rassico. And why is that significant? First of all, I loved Montgomery. I love the Alabama people. we had a marvelous pastor, a marvelous pastor.
Yeah.
When the Vatican II came about, every day after school, around 4 o'clock, he would meet with us in the convent, and he would take a chapter with us. Now, he didn't read it to us. We all had our books, and we read it. And
A chapter of
the documents.
Okay.
So we were reading this, not knowing really what we were reading about and we're talking about. But what his input was, what do we do for the people of this parish?
Wow.
What do we do for the people of this parish? That's the important thing. What can you all do as the nuns? What can I do as the pastor? What do you want me to do as the pastor? So, I mean, if there was something new in the liturgy, and we talked about it on that Monday, then he would, on Tuesday, put it in the parish. You know, because we worked together. I mean, it really was. It was a dynamic parish. It was a mixed parish. True Southerners that were born there. You know, you don't open windows in Montgomery, Alabama. You crack a window. And I remember when a first grader said, "Can I crack those windows?" I said, "Pardon me?"
Yeah, 'cause you, yeah.
I had no idea what that meant. So, I mean, it was a wonderful parish. But you also had 2 military bases, Air Force bases.
Yeah.
So you had a whole different clientele. And the pastor worked very, very well with the mixture that he had. So it was a delight to be in Montgomery.
Mm-hmm.
What wasn't a delight is the march. When the march came, the bishop at that point asked the religious not to be a part of it. And Monsignor talked to us about it, not to be a part of it. Now, we had never been involved with anything, yes or no, yes or no. So it wasn't like a big conscious thing. Yes, we should. We just said, fine, you know. And we saw tanks coming down the road in front of the house because it was a military base.
Right.
So as I look back in my life, what do I feel sorry about the most is that we were not, how do I want to say, ready or even thinking about what should we be doing as far as anything, as far as the march went. So that was exciting, but it was also very sad as I look back on what we didn't do and most likely should have done. What difference would it make? I don't know.
But back then, yeah, we didn't have all the media and the TV and the streaming and all of that. But
and we didn't have riot races in Montgomery at that point, you know. So Montgomery was pivotal. The people were good. The parish was open. You're open to everybody. There was no enclosed. You live in the convent and stay in the convent. We were with the people. We'd go to their house for dinner. They would come forward. It was just a marvelous experience for me.
At a time when that was not the common thing
Absolutely
to do.
not.
Right.
Absolutely
right.
not. And Adrian Dominicans were new.
Yeah.
The people in Montgomery didn't know who Adrian were. Monsignor didn't even know. He knew from a Monsignor that he knew Sarah Sharkey.
Yeah, so back in that time, how did he know about the Adrians? He must have written to Mother Gerald and said he wanted...
Eventually went to Mother Gerald.
Right, okay.
Monsignor Stuardi was the superintendent of schools in the diocese. And he and Monsignor McArdle were buddies. So when Monsignor said, you know, I'm going to have the school, and I don't know what nuns to get, Benedictine were most likely. And Monsignor started, you know, get the Adrians.
Oh, good.
Get the Adrians. So he got the Adrians. And he loved when Mother Gerald would come. He loved when Mother Genevieve came. He loved when Mother Ann Catherine came. He just had fun with them. And I mean, talked with them.
Oh, isn't that great?
Oh, it was marvelous. You know, there was no stratus, you know, you're the Mother General. I mean, we knew probably better than he knew. Mother Gerald is Mother Gerald. But, so it was a very good parish. I was there for 7 years.
Wow.
And I had gone there from St. Petersburg in Florida at St. Jude.
You were at Jude's a long time.
I was at Jude for 4 years.
Oh, 4.
Then I went to Montgomery. Then after 7 years, I get a call. I've decided to appoint you to St. Jude's.
Oh,
I think we were in that in-between.
Yeah.
Who were you? We didn't know who the heck we were.
Yeah.
So I said, It was Mother Laura, I think. We called them Mother at that point? Laura?
Yeah, because Aunt Catherine came later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she was the one that appointed me. I said, do you realize that I just came from there? She said, do you realize you're going back there? So I went back to St. Jude. Now I'm 7 years older. The kids I had in first grade were now in 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. So there I am with these little first graders are now my big 8th graders. So, and I love St. Jude too. When I really look at my life, I've loved every place I've been. And I've had good nuns, I've had wonderful superiors. That's been a real blessing to me, the leadership that I've had in this congregation and the people I've lived with. So I ended up back at St. Jude, and I was there, and then I got elected into leadership, went over to West Palm Beach. That was 6 years, I think it was. And then, and the other thing was when I entered, you remember when Sister Bertha was asking us what we would like to, what we would like to do? Sister, what would you like to do? And I thought, my mom doesn't even ask me that very often. And I said, oh, I'd like to be a nurse. Really? And she was so nice. I kept listening. She was so nice, and finally she said, well, you know what, we don't need any nurses. You'll be a teacher. And I thought, teacher? I don't even like school. Teacher.
Did you think when you entered?
Never.
What kind of an order you were entering? That was not even on the radar screen, right?
I had no idea. I knew that the Adrian, you know what the thing, and anytime we get Adrians together, Aquinas girls that are Adrians, well, what is it that drew us to the nuns? You know, and I would say almost every single one said the joy of the Aquinas nuns. Now, then maybe they didn't have joy, but when they were at school, I mean, they were happy, they were energetic, they were accepting you as a person that had gifts and talents. They nourished them. So where else would you ever go?
What nun has been the most influential in your life?
Veronica Gunther.
Oh, Veronica. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. I never knew her. At one point, I got a call from Veronica when she was at West Palm Beach, and she was teaching, and I don't know how she got my name. I never did ask her. And she was looking at starting a vocation club, and I was looking at the same thing, because there was a high school that wasn't ours, though. So I called Veronica and said, you know, can you give me some things? What do I do with a vocation school? And she did. That's how we got to know one another.
Yeah,
and then she very, very pivotal. She saw something in me that I wasn't sure I really had, but she also let me come to see and understand what that was. So the call to leadership, Veronica.
And when you were in leadership, you did that same thing for other sisters.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope so. Yeah.
That,
you know, when that questionnaire that you sent us, what do you hope people, what do you want to say about yourself? I'd like to say that people can say, oh yeah, Dougherty, yeah. Is she one of those Doughertys? Because, you know, there were 3 Dougherty. And I had to convince Mother Gerald. Now, I don't know
and
how
spelled the same.
Spell the same, Chicago, Aquinas, and look alike. In fact, Mother just sent John Aquin down to Florida so she'd be close to her sister. And she sent me to St. Jude and St. Petersburg. The whole state apart. And I didn't know any of them. I didn't know what she was talking about. And she said, you know, you're going to go down and be with your sister.
Oh, gosh.
And I said, I can't be with sister. Mother, I don't have any sisters. I have 4 brothers. No, you have your sister. Aren't you from Chicago?
Okay.
And I think back, too, if I ever wondered, was I a strong person, there I was telling Mother Gerald, she can't send me to Florida. I don't have any sisters. I have brothers. And then she said, well, all right. Well, you're still going to St. Jude. And then she said, I want you to go home now for your home visit. And I looked at her again. I said, Mother, I can't go home. I often wonder, what did she think about me?
You were.
I was bold. I said to her, I can't go home. My mother and father work, and they can't take off because I'm coming home. They just can't do that. Oh, Next year you're to come home.
That was smart, because the rest of us had to go when your father couldn't get the vacation.
Right, right.
How insightful you were.
Well, I was.
And you've
I
always
don't know if I was more afraid of my Mother Gerald or my mother and dad that I wasn't going to, you're coming home and you're going to sit home by yourself.
What gives you energy and purpose at this time of your life? I know you've just moved here in Chicago. You left Chicago.
I left Chicago.
That's hard.
But left Chicago happily.
Yeah.
I mean, I enjoyed all the time I was there. I was very positive about coming home and said that to people because, as you know, I had been here before. Let me go back to ministry. What was probably the most growthful ministry I had? Probably the most growthful was the beginning of Montgomery. Secondly, when I went into CPE, I couldn't become a nurse because we didn't need any. And I had a real desire to be in the medical field. My both grandparents, my mother's mother and my dad's mother, were both in nursing. And that was somewhat a real aim of mine. And I forgot about it because once you realize you're not going to have choices of what you want to do, it's where you go. So when I finally could ask to go to CPE, I was up here in Adrian, and Claire O'Connor asked me to be in charge of the spiritual care department at Maria. And I said, Claire, I don't think so. I said, number one, I don't have any CPE, and the women who are over there, who are chaplains, have CPE. I don't think it's fair to me, not to me, to them, for me to be over there now in charge. And she said, oh, don't worry, we can work all of that out, and you can take CPE while you're here. So I was able to be here and do CPE over in St. Joe, do a 6 week. And then when I got into Chicago, again it was that I can get my CPE and get certified. So I got certified, and I interviewed at Mercy and got the job at Mercy, which is interesting because I did, as a high school student, did work at Mercy Hospital. Jean Hughes and I together were.
Oh, really?
I mean, the connections, when you really, if you take the time and look at your life, how it's all connected. Jean and I are working together at Mercy High School. Who would ever think of that? Jean and I became very good friends, and you know the rest of the story. So it's interesting how it goes. So I ended up being a CPE, and I ended up coming back here and being head of the CPE. Then I went into Chicago and got a job at Mercy and did that for 20 years. Loved it.
Is there, to sum this up, is there one thing that you'd like to share with all of us that we would say, I didn't know that?
Oh my gosh.
Really?
Oh my gosh, Peg. I don't know. I suppose kneeling down and talking to Mother Gerald when she said, you're to go to Florida and because you'll be close to your sister. Convincing her, first of all, I didn't know any Doughertys. I didn't know Doughertys were in the community. So when I did that, and I remember walking out of Mother's office, and that's when she then said, you go home, and you could go home before. And I was like blown out of the water. What did I just do? I just told Mother Gerald, we can't do this. And later on, as I thought about that, I was nervy. I don't know what it was.
You were an adult.
I was an adult. My inner authority came out faster than I thought.
You probably were reading St. Catherine of Siena at the time, and how she was
she
spoke up. She spoke the truth. She was a woman of integrity, which you are, and a lot of other
Peg,
things.
This is fun.
No, seriously, that's awesome. That it makes sense, and I don't think that's the era that we grew up in. We were like. Yeah. Anyway, so we have to close this up, but thank you so much for sharing that and your story with us. And I must say, I'm very disappointed that you didn't have a box of Fannie Mae to share with us.
Oh,
your dear mother.
But now you know what I would share with you.
Yeah. Your dear mom. We always waited for Fannie Mae.
I know, and she wrapped it up like it was going through the war. She loved her family.
Anyway, well, thank you. And we're
One
delighted to
thing-
have you on
One
this
thing I would
campus.
say about the congregation, I think that we are a women with great courage, great hope, and we have it from our four leaders, and we have it within ourselves because it's been nourished. And I'm extremely proud of being an Adrian Dominican.
And what else has assisted us is all the great women with whom we have lived.
Yes.
When I think of the women that I lived with, and I was in big places and small places, awesome.
Yeah. I think of Kathy McKillop is another one.
Right, right.
I don't want to say it.
And I also thank God for the women I entered with in
Yes.
1956. So blessings and thank you.
Right. Thank you.